I've grown tomatoes for 20 years, raised beds, containers, clay soil, sandy soil, backyards up and down this country, and in all that time, one mistake destroys more harvests than pests, heat, and bad luck combined: watering, and it's not what you think. You walk out in the morning, coffee in hand, expecting your first perfect harvest. Instead, the fruit split wide open on the vine, or the leaves are curling yellow for no reason, or the whole plant collapsed overnight, flat on the ground, like something pulled it down while you slept. You watered it, you barbied it, you moved the hose closer, thinking more water was the fix. It got worse anyway. Here's what you need to hear: it's not you, it never was. By the end of this video, you'll know the exact watering method university researchers tested in a controlled greenhouse study, and it cut tomato disease almost in half. This is why your neighbor's plants are loaded with fruit, deep red, no cracks, no spots, while yours drop blossoms, split on the vine, and fight disease you didn't even know had a name. Stay for all 5. The last one changes everything. Quick ask before we start. Drop your USDA zone or your city in the comments. Tomato watering looks completely different in the humid southeast versus bone-dry inland California versus the Midwest's spring swings. I read every comment. It shapes what I cover next. Mistake 1. Watering on a schedule instead of watering the soil. This trips up experienced gardeners as often as beginners. You water every morning, clockwork, because the nursery tag said so, or your neighbor does it, or it's just a habit now, like brushing your teeth. Here's the problem: tomatoes don't care what day it is. They care what's happening 6 to 8 inches down in the root zone right now. Water on a fixed schedule instead of checking the soil, and you'll do one of 2 damaging things, sometimes both, in the same week. First, soaking soil that's already wet. Roots need oxygen as much as water. Water a bed that's still moist, and you fill every air pocket with more water. The roots start to suffocate. This is where root rot begins. Phytophthora, Pythium, Fusarium, these fungi thrive in soil that stays constantly wet. They infect stressed, waterlogged roots, turning them soft and mushy. And here's what catches people every time: root rot looks almost identical to underwatering. Wilting leaves, drooping stems, so you water more, the exact opposite of what a rotting root system needs. The plant spirals while you're doing what feels responsible. Second, failure mode. Skipping a day the plant needed water right before a heavy rain floods the soil back. That whiplash, dry then flooded, is one of the biggest reasons tomatoes crack on the vine. Picture tomato as a thin-skinned balloon filling with water. Fill it gradually, the skin stretches to match. Fill it suddenly after dry stretch, and the flesh swells faster than the skin can keep up. It splits, usually a long crack from the stem, sometimes webbed across the shoulders. Split tomatoes are still edible if you catch them fast, but they rot quick once the skin's breached and pests move in. The fix costs you nothing but a few seconds. Push a finger 2 inches into the soil at the base of the plant. Still moist, walk away, check tomorrow. Dry, water deep, soak it all the way down to where the roots live, not a quick surface splash. Deep, infrequent watering based on the soil, not the calendar. It's the single easiest change you can make this week, and it fixes root rot and splitting at once, because you stop swinging between too wet and too dry. Here's how this plays out in real life. A gardener waters every morning without fail. Weeks go great. Then July hits, temperatures climb, and a couple leaves near the bottom go soft and yellow. First instinct, needs more water, so they add an evening watering on top of the morning one. Within a week, the yellowing spread higher, the stem near the soil line looks dark and mushy. They pull the plant. The roots are brown, slimy, falling apart in their hands. Root rot, caused entirely by constant moisture, mistaken the whole time for thirst. The 2-inch soil test would have caught it in week 1, before a single root was damaged. Mistake 2, watering the leaves instead of the soil. This one's bigger than most people realize, and here's what nobody at the garden center tells you. Overhead sprinkler or hose spray drifting up onto the leaves, you're not just wasting water, you're creating the exact conditions fungal disease needs to take hold. There's real research on this. Cornell's Department of Plant Pathology ran a greenhouse study comparing overhead irrigation, wetting the foliage, against surface irrigation, delivered straight to the base, leaves dry, same greenhouse, same disease pressure, same starting conditions. Overhead watered tomatoes, 68% disease incidence. Soil watered tomatoes, 35%, cut nearly in half just by changing where the water landed. Here's why: late blight, one of the most destructive tomato diseases there is, only needs 2 hours of continuous leaf wetness to establish. 2 hours. Run a sprinkler for 20 minutes in the evening and leaves stay damp well past midnight, especially humid climates, no breeze. You just handed the pathogen its window while you slept. Nobody's selling you a sprinkler attachment is walking you through plant pathology before you check out. That's not a knock on them. Their job is to sell you a product, not explain leaf wetness periods and spore germination. That gap is exactly why this channel exists. The fix: water at the base, every time. A soaker hose or drip line is ideal, it never touches a leaf. Hand watering with a hose, aim low, hold the foliage back, skip the overhead shower. And if leaves do get wet, rain, overspray, water in the morning, not the evening, so sun and airflow dry everything out before night extends that dangerous window. One more layer: same research tracked spore release throughout the day with a spore trap. Spore release spiked as humidity dropped, which happens late morning as the sun climbs and air dries out. Sunny days, sharp humidity drop, spore count spiked. Overcast days, barely any change. So a plant with wet foliage overnight, hit by morning sun, is primed for infection and spreads at the same moment. Keep the leaves dry and that mechanism never starts. Subscribe now, we are barely halfway. The next mistakes are the ones that cost you the entire harvest. Mistake 3, mulching too late or not at all. Small mistake, undermines almost everything else you do right. Bare soil dries out fast, especially once summer sun kicks in. Dry soil surface means you swing between bone dry and freshly soaked more than you think, even if you feel consistent with your watering. That swing is the exact mechanism behind splitting fruit and blossom end rot, that sunken black patch on the bottom of an otherwise good tomato. Blossom end rot happens when the plant can't take up enough calcium, and calcium uptake depends almost entirely on consistent water movement. Inconsistent moisture doesn't just risk the fruit you have. It stops the plant from building strong fruit in the first place. A 2-inch layer of mulch, straw, shredded leaves, dried grass clippings around the base slows evaporation dramatically. The ground stays evenly moist between waterings. The plant stops lurching between drought stress and waterlogged stress every few days. Mulch also stabilizes soil temperature, which matters more than people think. Tomato roots are sensitive to overheating in the top few inches during peak summer. Fair exception here, some experienced growers skip mulch if they're running a tightly calibrated drip system. That can work, but only if you're still checking soil by hand sometimes, not just trusting the timer and walking away for 2 weeks. For most home gardeners, hand watering with a hose, skipping mulch, means inviting those exact moisture swings. One thing that trips people up every spring: don't pile mulch against the stem. Leave 1 inch or 2 of bare soil around the base first. Mulch against the stem traps moisture right where the stem meets soil, the same damp environment that causes stem rot, the very thing mulch is supposed to prevent. Mistake 4, shallow, frequent sips instead of deep, infrequent soaks. I see this one more than almost any other. Ironically, it comes from good intentions. Hot afternoon, you walk past the bed, leaves look droopy. Instinct kicks in, grab the hose, 5-second splash, feels like a rescue, it's not. A quick splash wets the top inch of soil. In hot weather, that moisture evaporates in hours, long before it reaches the root zone. Worse, do this repeatedly, and you train roots to stay shallow and lazy near the surface, chasing the water. Those shallow roots have zero reserve when real heat hits later in the season. The plant wilts harder, faster, every time, so you water more, and the cycle spirals. Deep, infrequent watering works completely differently. Soak the soil 6 to 8 inches down, then leave it alone until it actually dries out. This pushes roots deeper, into soil where moisture and temperature stay stable. A tomato with a deep root system coasts through a week of heat that would send a shallow-rooted plant into full wilt by noon. Here's what nobody's selling you: acute watering will mention: Afternoon wilting on a hot day is often completely normal, not a sign you need the hose. Tomato leaves droop at midday as a defense, pulling back water loss to conserve moisture. If they've perked back up by morning, the plant was never thirsty. Reacting to every midday droop with more water is exactly how you fall into the shallow root trap. I made this mistake myself for years before I understood what I was looking at. Practical fix: pick 2 check-in times, early morning, early evening, never midday. The plant's under heat stress and will look wilted no matter what. Run the 2-inch probe test at each check-in. Dry, slow, deep soak, 6 to 8 inches down, not just a darkened surface. Moist, walk away, even if the leaves look sad in the noon sun. Do this for 2 or 3 weeks, and you'll notice the plant needs checking less often because the roots have grown down into stable moisture instead of clinging to the surface. If you don't subscribe right now, videos like this stop showing up in your feed. You'll go back to guessing, or worse, some random forum post at 11 at night while your tomatoes are dying in front of you. Mistake 5. Ignoring container tomatoes entirely. If you're growing in pots or grow bags, everything I just covered gets more complicated and there's almost no watering advice online. Containers heat up fast. They drain faster. There's far less soil to buffer moisture swings than an in-ground bed. A container tomato can go from perfectly moist to bone dry in one hot afternoon, especially a dark plastic pot on concrete, radiating heat straight into the root ball. Treating it like an in-ground plant, checking every couple days, isn't enough in peak summer. In real heat, check once a day, sometimes twice, above 90 degrees. There's just not enough soil mass to hold a reserve. And the base not leaves rule matters even more here. Potted tomatoes sit closer together on patios and decks, with less airflow than a properly spaced garden bed. Less airflow means wet foliage stays wet longer, extending that dangerous window fungal pathogens wait for. One detail almost nobody mentions: pot color and material. A dark plastic or dark glazed pot in full sun heats the soil against its walls hotter than the surrounding air, speeding up moisture loss. Choose a lighter color or set the pot on feet so air moves underneath instead of trapping heat against hot concrete. That alone can meaningfully cut how often you water. Add a 2-inch mulch layer on the container soil, same as the ground, and moisture holds far more evenly, even through the hottest stretch of summer. Like I promised, here's the exact technique that cuts tomato disease almost in half. In that Cornell greenhouse study, researchers ran side-by-side trials on tomatoes deliberately exposed to late blight under identical conditions. One group watered overhead, wetting the foliage, how most sprinklers and casual hand watering actually work. The other watered exclusively at the soil surface, leaves staying dry the whole trial. Same greenhouse, same plants, same disease pressure. Overhead, 68% disease incidence. Soil surface, 35%. Cut nearly in half, just by changing where the water landed. Here's how to put this to work. 1. Water only at the base. Soak a hose, drip line, or a hose held low with foliage pushed aside. Retire the overhead sprinkler for your tomatoes, save it for the lawn. 2. Water in the morning, not the evening. Overnight moisture gives fungal spores their best window to germinate. Morning watering gives everything a full day to dry before night falls. 3. Water deep, not often. Check 2 inches down before every session. When you water, soak it 6 to 8 inches deep, down to where the roots actually live. 4. Mulch every plant with 2 inches of straw or shredded leaves. Keeps moisture level between waterings instead of swinging wild. 5. Prioritize airflow as seriously as water, especially in humid climates or if you've had blight before. Space plants further apart than the tag recommends. Prune the lowest leaves so air moves under the canopy and dries things out fast after rain. That's the whole system. Base, morning, deep, mulched, airy. Do those 5 things, and you've addressed the actual root cause behind nearly every tomato problem gardeners spend a season blaming themselves for. Here's a simple weekly rhythm. Early in the week, soil probe at your 2 fixed check-in times, water deep wherever it's dry. Midweek, walk the bed looking for early trouble, a water-soaked patch on a lower leaf, yellowing from the bottom up, the first hint of a crack near the stem. Catch it early, adjust that same week. Weekend, check your mulch, top it up if it's thin, glance at spacing and airflow, especially after rain or humid stretches. 10 minutes twice a week. Tells you more than any fixed schedule ever could. If you want to go further, some growers use cheap soil moisture sensors wired to an automated system. A capacitive probe, a small controller, a relay that switches a pump or valve on when moisture drops below a set threshold, often monitored right from your phone. It takes the guesswork out entirely and prevents both overwatering and underwatering because it only adds water when the soil actually calls for it. You don't need anything this elaborate to grow great tomatoes. A finger, a soaker hose, and the 5 habits above will get you there. But if you like to tinker or you travel during the growing season, it's worth knowing the option exists. It solves the exact whiplash problem we identified as the real villain. One more time, because I want this to stick. It's not you, it never was. You just weren't handed this piece of information, that consistency matters more than frequency, that where the water lands matters as much as how much you use. Until now. Tell me in the comments, which of these 5 mistakes did you recognize in your own garden this season? Which one surprised you? That tells me exactly what to go deeper on next. If this helped, drop a like. See you in the next one.